Howdy folks. Today we're going to look at a library that we're using for a couple of our projects called Inquirer. Now, what is Inquirer for? Inquirer is specifically a backend library that is meant for building command line interface programs. And so we've done a couple of these or worked with a couple of these before. We run them on the terminal and you pass in some flags and they do some things and they quit. Well, Inquirer is meant to make those more interactive. It's meant to ask questions of your user and get responses. So let's take a look. We don't need Express for this. In fact, Express and Inquirer don't really play that well together. You probably wouldn't want to be using them at the same time. Express is more for servers where you have APIs. Inquirer is more for command line applications where you don't have an API. So let's take a look. I've got a brand new folder, brand new project. So I'm going to initialize package.json. And then let's install Inquirer. Hope I spelled it right. It's kind of a tricky word to spell. Okay, now that that's finished, let's take a look. We installed version 9.1.4. Now that is going to cause a problem for us, and I'll show you why that causes a problem and how to deal with that in the minute. So I'm going to make an index.js, okay, and then I'm actually going to make a .git ignore because I don't want to check in my node modules folder. There's not much in it, but there's still stuff I don't want to check in. And I'm going to put node modules in here and save that so that that does not go into my Git repository. It's an important step. So, I spelled it wrong. See, what is it? Q-I-E-R. Not easy to spell mod or module. Inquirer. Okay, so the first thing that you need for Inquirer is it's called prompt. So let's look up the documentation for that. All right, I'm gonna go and open up a browser window. Inquirer. Seeing we're getting something that's not that helpful, so I'm going to put node just to specify that that's what we want. Okay, and there's my npm package. That's great. Okay. Inquirer.js. So, not the hardest thing to use. Inquirer exports a prompt method, and when you call the prompt, you pass a number of different questions into it. And it will ask those questions of the user one after another. And when the user has given all of the responses, the promise will be resolved. So you can see they're using then here. You can also use async await just as well. And the catch, probably, I haven't seen many instances where there's actually issues with this, but if you need to handle errors, it's in there. Okay, so question object. So let's take a look at the question object. The question object is a hash, which is basically they mean an object. A type. So here's the different types that they can have. Input, which I think is just raw text. Number, which would make sure it's a number. Confirm, which is a yes or no confirmation. List, where you can select. You can give someone a list of choices and they can select one. Checkbox, they can select multiple choices. Password, which is similar to a text input, but it does little dots or asterisks. And editors, I've not worked with too much, but I would have to guess that's probably a longer answer where you could edit text. So what I'm going to do, let's start with input and number, okay? So let's go here. Let's say, so we're going to use just the thenable promise first. Okay, .then, and it takes a callback, answers, okay? And that's just console log answers. Okay, so the first thing we need, this is actually, I think this is actually an array, excuse me. So it takes an array of objects, type, let's say input, okay, type, number. Now there's a couple other fields we might care about. We want to be able to ask the user a question. So if we go back to the documentation, we have a message here. We'll get to name in a minute. Message is either a function or a string, and you can see if you pass a function into it, it will give you the previous answers. So let's say if the first one is what is your name? Okay, then the next one, responses, and I can say return hello responses.name. Need to make this a template string. What is your age? So you can kind of personalize the messages as you go along, which might be useful. So how do I know that was name? This is the important part. Name parameter here, and that's actually a little confusing, needs to be the actual key that is set in this answers object. So I'm going to set one down here as well. This and this have nothing to do with each other. I'm just calling it name here. In fact, let me call it my name. Okay, and then I have to change it here as well. And age. This is just the property that Inquirer is looking for. So if I run this, we get kind of an interesting error. Require of ES module is not supported. Okay, now what does that mean? Well, Node has two ways of requiring modules. There is require.js, which we're used to using, and there's common.js. Common.js is more popular at this point, and Node does support it, but you have to do a little bit of work to make it happen. Some modules, Inquirer is one of them, only supports that. So let's take a look at our Node modules here. Let's look at Inquirer, okay. Let's look at our Inquirer.js. Notice this is not how we import stuff. And if I look down here, this is not how we export stuff either. This is common JS syntax. This is a new syntax of imports and exports. Inquirer 9 uses this version. And we can't use that because we're going to get this error. There are some ways to make it happen, but they're a little complicated. So what we're going to do is we actually have to downgrade our version of Inquirer. So you see, if we went to package.json, this is 9.1.4. We need version 8. The first number here is a major version, so when they went to this ES common JS syntax with the exports and imports like that, they bumped the major version, which is nice of them because it means Node will not automatically upgrade a major version, where it will upgrade minor versions and patches, so people's projects didn't break. So there's a couple of ways we can go about this. We can manually change our version here. So I can say 8.2.4, and then I can run a reinstall. The other thing you can do is if you're installing, so I'm going to remove this. All right, you can actually put an ampersand, so Inquirer at 8.2.4. And what that does is that will specify I want this version and no higher. So if I run this, takes a little minutes, and you can see it tells me, hey, 9.1.4 is available, but I installed the version you asked. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. If you're starting off from the beginning, this is what you should do. Do your install with the ampersand. This works with npm as well as pnpm. They have the same command structure. If you do it without this ampersand, you will end up with the version 9, and you'll get errors like this. So if you get this error, this require of ES module, you need to downgrade your version. The other way you can do that is just by changing it in your package.json to the correct version number and running install again. So now that we've done that, let's run our index.js. Okay, it says Inquirer is not a function. Oh, whoops. Well, I wonder why not. Inquirer, oh, you know why? Because it's supposed to be Inquirer.prompt. Because Inquirer actually has functions on it. It's not just this thing. So if you get that error, Inquirer is not a function, it should be Inquirer.prompt. Let's see if that does what I want. Okay, what is your name? Okay. And then, you notice, since hello, Robert, what is your age? It took my name. The responses array contains all of the previous responses that you had there, which can be useful for stuff like this. And then if I say, okay, 33. Now I want you to note something important. Okay. Whatever you put in here, in this string, is the key to your object. So if I want to access my name, I have to put my name. If I put something wacky in there, bunch of gibberish like this, and then I try to console log my name, hi, and notice, first of all, it says undefined here, because this key is changed. So whatever is the value of name here becomes the key of your answers. So just keep that in mind, that whatever, if you want to utilize your answer, you're going to have to use whatever you put for the name here, because that's how it creates the object. It doesn't create the object and magically just know it's the name and the age. You have to tell it. And what you tell it, it's just going to blindly handle. We're using the promise here with .then. So we could also use async await. And that can be helpful in some cases, especially if you want multiple prompts. So let's say at this point I want to say, okay, let's do something a little different actually. If I want to say, let's add some objects into a thing, like maybe pets. This is similar enough to one of your challenges. I want to actually start using a list here. So let's take a look at list. Okay. So if I change this, I say type list, what pet to add? Pet type. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of this one to start off with. Okay, so we've got our list, right? If I run this, it's like, what? You must provide choices. So if I give the user a list, I must provide some choices for the user to select. I can do a function, which is similar to the message, or I can give it an array. Array values can be numbers, strings, or objects containing name and value. And a short, which is kind of interesting. So what we can do here is I can say cat, dog, fish, because those are the only 3 kinds of pets that exist in the world. Now if I run that, you see I'm using the arrow keys here. This is kind of cool. And I hit enter. Okay, pet type dog. Do it again, cat. I could also do a complex object. Why would you want to do an object for this? Well, because maybe I want my key, my value to actually be lowercase here, cat dog, but I want to show up with an uppercase letter. So I could say cat value cat. Okay, so now if I run that, you see it shows up with an uppercase C. When I hit enter, it's a lowercase c. That's a small thing, but you wouldn't be surprised you run into enough situations where the actual thing that you're checking on, the value you want to have, is different from how you want to display it to the user. Okay, so now let's say if I want to add a cat, okay, I could say, okay, if answers, actually, no, this is actually a perfect use for a switch case. Answers.pet type, case cat. And then in this case, we might like do something else with a cat. Maybe we've got another Inquirer prompt. Okay, so let's put this in here and let's say, okay, we got another Inquirer prompt. At this point, we're going to say input pet name, and then we say .then pet data. You have a cat named pet data.name. Note again, name, not because of this property, but because of the string that's placed in here. So I could call it also cat name, and then I'd have to say cat name. Okay, and then if I break, I'm just going to put a default in there. All right, so if I run this and I say, okay, let's add a cat, it pops up pet name. And let me change this cat name just so that you know it's clear we're doing a cat here. All right, you have a cat named Zinx. Now, what if at this point I wanted it to go back to the top? Well, it's kind of hard to do at this point, right? Because I could actually have a function main menu, and then have this main inquirer prompt inside the main menu. Oops. And then have a function add cat, and have this inquire prompt in here. Then when I'm done here, I just go back to the main menu. So this is not an uncommon way of handling this. You start off at the bottom, you call your main menu to kick it off. That runs the first inquire prompt that says, what pet do you want to add? Okay. It comes in here, it calls add cat. Okay. That comes in here, and then maybe, let's add another question here. How many lives does your cat have? Because, you know, cats have 9 lives. You have a cat named with data lives. Then it hits the main menu again and loops and loops and loops again forever. So let's try that. Okay, I had a cat. Zinx. She's old. She's probably down to, I think she's got about 5 lives left. Okay, you have a cat named Zinx with 5 lives. And now you notice it runs the main menu again. So this is how, if you need to loop a menu, you can do it. So you can have multiple functions, have your main menu in one function, have a switch case that calls the prompts, and inside here do some other stuff, and then return to the main menu. This return is important if you don't have this in here. If I call dog, it just quits. So let's add some other functions in here. Add dog name. Just gonna leave this name. Let's see. How many bones does your dog have? Because as far as I know, dogs don't get multiple lives, which is sad. Name with bones. Notice we've got the main menu again. So now if I run this, I say dog. Oh, it doesn't do anything. So if I trace through here, I've only got a case for cat. How I would find that is I'd say, okay, let's say I spelled it Doge, right? What I could do if I said, okay, you know, I've got a dog. Why is it not doing anything? Why is it quitting immediately after I put my entry? Well, what that should tell you is if it's quitting immediately afterwards, it means it's getting to this then here, falling off the end of the default, and it's not doing anything. And because there's nothing to do, it ends the program. So what you can do here then is actually console log answers and just say, okay, what is it getting? Okay, dog. What I'm seeing really common here is if someone has picked the wrong key. So they've been like type, right? If I put type in here and I run this and I say cat, not going to work because that's the wrong key here. The key is pet type. And so console logging right at this point, you look at that and look at this key specifically and say, okay, what is that key? Pet type. What am I looking for? I'm looking for type, okay. Then the next thing you say is, what is the value? So if dog isn't working, the value of this is dog. Okay, where am I supposed to be handling dog? Oh, I made a typo. So that's kind of a quick and simple way to debug through if your inquire prompt is quitting prematurely right after you enter something. It's probably, it got to a point like this, and you're either using the wrong key on the object or the value doesn't match and it just doesn't know what to do. So now if I go to dog, it says, okay, dog name. How many bones do you have? Oh god, this dog has so many bones. 1,000. A dog's. That's a typo. And there we go. And we go back to the main menu because of this. Okay. So now, I'm going to put add fish. We're going to go fish name. I don't have any extra questions for fish. I don't know. I have fish. They weren't that exciting. And now the next thing we have to do our final case. Fish. Add fish. Great. You can do this with this statements too. It's just this is what switch cases are meant for. Okay. Fish. Okay. Fish name. Glubbles. Sounds like a good fish name, right? You have a fish named Glubbles. So now, how do I get out of here? I can't leave. It keeps bringing me back. Well, what I should probably do is add another choice. Exit. Okay. And then, in my current switch case, if it doesn't understand the choice, it just quits by default, which is kind of nice. So exit just exits. But what you could also do, if you had some final case that you wanted to, like, for example, print a README, exit, call function to output data, and then break. And because it's not calling any of these methods, which call the main menu again, it'll just fall off the end. So if I go exit, just ends. So that is how you do Inquirer. And hopefully a couple of the common mistakes I've seen people make. You also can do this as an async await. So what that would look like is I would change this. Let's do this. Let's just grab this prompt here. And we'll do it down here. And we'll call this function main menu 2, because we already have a main menu. And this is going to be an async function. So now, if I await, not that, const menu answer equals await inquire.prompt. So this will do much the same. Actually, let me just change this to answer. So then I can actually grab my switch case here and put it like this. I call the answers. So let me get rid of this so you can see what it's doing. So now, where are you? Oh yeah, okay. So now we've got our await, our same prompt, right? But instead of the dot then, we've got await. We get our answers, and then we do that same switch case on these ones. So if I want to run this here, that's not right. Node. Same thing. Dog. Ooh. Or foot. It's a good name for dog, foot. All right. Same thing. Now we could change these. Probably should be main menu 2, main menu 2, main menu 2, so it goes back to the correct thing. But it's the same idea. So the dot then is one way to do it. It's probably the simpler way to do it. The await can be a little more complicated, but this is how you would handle it in both cases. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you all next time.